Welcome back, America. I'm very excited. Tomorrow, I'm going to be leaving for Orlando, Florida. No, not to go to Disney World, to go to something even more exciting. The Moms for Liberty annual event is there. All sorts of luminaries, great discussion. One of them, who'll be making a big speech there, is joining us now. She's the Vice President and Legal Fellow at Defending Education. She's also a former Senior Counsel at the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. She's a good friend. She is Sarah Parshall-Perry. Sarah, good to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me back.
We love having you on. What a difference a year makes. I think about a year ago, maybe when President Trump spoke at the last Moms for Liberty event here in Washington, people were still worried. Are we going to save education? Are we going to roll back all this crazy ideology, DEI, CRT? What a difference a year has made. Your assessment of how much progress we've made.
I think it's hard to overestimate exactly how much progress has been made. In fact, we've seen 42% of the Department of Education shrunk, with another 500 employees, the most bloated of all the federal bureaucratic agencies, already shrunk down. But we've seen funding and civil rights enforcement continue apace, which is great news for the average American parent on the ground who has a child with special needs, or a child who happens to be a minority, or a child who wants to play on a sports team as a girl and wants to make sure there are biological protections in place to guarantee her safety and equality. We have seen, I think, some monumental gains and a real paradigm shift in the state of American education. We know that the ultimate aim of this department is to be essentially shuttered. They are on a kamikaze mission, as Secretary Linda McMahon has said, and their goal is ultimately to send education back to the states and back to the people and their elected representatives, which is where it was always destined to be.
Yeah. Sarah, I think a vitals check on teachers' unions would show that they are diminishing. Do you feel that with the reduction in the size of the Department of Education, but also the work of people like you and your organizations and moms across this country who have spoken out about school curriculum, especially during COVID, when moms and dads became uncomfortably familiar with their kids' curriculums, in light of all of that, does it feel like the influence of teachers' unions is waning in on life support?
You know, it's interesting because we're actually seeing sort of what I believe to be the flare before the dying of the light. And the fact that we see people like Becky Pringle of the AFT, and we see people like Randy Weingarten of the NEA, who are more vociferous and they are more vitriolic in their rhetoric on things like anti-fascism in public education. And they are writing books about how to teach and how to defeat principles of fascism. They're not ever concerned with education. We know that. In fact, our research has indicated they are little more than political agitprops. They gave $221 million in the past 4 years alone between the AFT and the NEA to hard left political causes, most of which were funded by the Soros organization. But the fact that they are getting louder indicates the fact that parental power is also continuing apace. We all had a wake-up call during the COVID pandemic. I know for my own fault that I was watching over my children's shoulders is I was a senior attorney in the Department of Education, and yet online schooling 3 of my own children. It was at that point at which my own eyes were opened to exactly the curricular inclusions that we were seeing and how public education had begun to fail every American student. But it took the waking up of American parents to recognize that, to ultimately step into our authority as those who know best about our children's education, health, and welfare, and in fact to finally do something about it. Organizations like Moms for Liberty and our organization Defending Education are absolutely thrilled to be able to be here at this moment in time and to actually start to see the fruits of our hard labor.
Sarah, you do so much important work. Your group was instrumental in exposing something. And as much progress as we've made, and we made a lot of progress, you found something pretty troubling in the Seattle School District. Tell us what you found.
Seattle Public Schools have been partnering with Seattle Children's Hospital, CHOP, where we actually know some of the most gruesome medical procedures are transpiring in the country. And in fact, that department for so-called gender-affirming care for minors is run by a so-called non-binary, trans-friendly surgeon. And that individual has been working with Seattle Public Schools to provide supplies for something called community health lockers. Now, this, of course, sounds relatively benign, very anodyne, but these community health lockers actually actually include things like trans tape and binders and tucking tape and trans removal tape and cross-dressing clothing items. Ultimately, these particular items have been achieved and received from Seattle Children's Hospital to perpetuate the notion that children who feel gender dysphoric are in fact born in the wrong bodies, so that these children can be socially transitioned at school. It is hard to overstate exactly how serious a dereliction of duty this is by the school administrators, and how serious an interference with parental rights to not only call children by a different name, to not only hide school records, but to facilitate social transitioning at school. We look forward to the Department of Education taking a very close look at what's happening in Seattle.
Sarah, John's going to be heading down there to this Moms for Liberty event. I know for a fact he is for liberty, but I also know for a fact he's not a mom. He is a dad, however. What role do dads play in all of this? Men who are supporting the moms who have the backs of their children.
I cannot tell you how important dads are. We're actually going to have a panel down here on the importance of fatherhood, and there are some wonderful Christian dads who are down here who are going to talk about the role that they have in raising up and equipping young men and women, raising them in the kind of values that will not only help them flourish individually, but that will perpetuate human flourishing in this entire nation. We celebrate in very short order, in only a few months next year, the 250th anniversary of this country. Strong fathers and strong families have made our flourishing possible, and it is ultimately essential that we keep them at the forefront of this fight, not just the mothers, but the dads by their sides.
One of my favorite things here was watching Charlie Kirk so passionately advocate for the role of dad, and for dad to step up and be good men, good dads, good husbands. We need a lot more advocates like that in the future. I can't wait to be there tomorrow night. Last question for you. I've heard some rumors that the NEA just passed some sort of resolution saying that it's important that school educators teach that Donald Trump is a fascist. Am I misinterpreting that?
No, in fact, you've got it directly and accurately correct, John. I have to tell you that back in July, they have an annual conference, and they just passed a resolution at the NEA to determine that Donald Trump was a fascist and to characterize all of his policies, principles, missions, and electives as fascist in nature, which indicates yet again, John, that because they didn't have any resolutions related to the increase in the quality of American education or flourishing for American children, but they did in fact decide that they were going to take a stand on fascism as purportedly represented by our sitting president. That indicates again that these are politicos. They are not individuals who are at all concerned with American education, and least of all with American children. And every one of your viewers and listeners should bear that in mind.
I couldn't agree more. And Sarah, you do so much to open our eyes to all the insanity that's been going in our education system. That knowledge empowers us to make the big changes we're starting to get. Great to have you here. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Looking forward to it, John. Thank you.
Yeah, what a great interview. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, an update on the Letitia James fraud allegations. You're not going to want to miss this. We'll have that next, but after these messages. Hey, America, let me bring you up to speed on a quiet but urgent issue. CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies, are being developed by 134 countries. These digital dollars will give governments the ability to track every transaction and limit how you use your own money. This includes setting expiration dates on your savings or locking your account without notice. American Alternative Assets is warning Americans now before it's too late. They published a free digital guide called the Digital Dollar Trap. It outlines the risks and shows how to use physical gold to protect your retirement savings. If you're concerned about privacy and control of your finances, this guide is for you. Here's how you get it. Call 1-855-465-3340 or visit johnlikesgold.com to get your free copy. That's 1-855-465-3340 or go to johnlikesgold.com. Get the facts, secure your future.